Hello everybody, welcome back to another One Leeds video with myself, Connor, and we are here to go through a few things that we need to discuss really with the new manager, Jesse Marsch. Listen, I'm here as a Leeds United fan channel to try and give you guys a little bit of an update and a little bit of an insight on what we can expect from the new boss. And listen, before we start the video, I'm not going to profess to know absolutely everything about Jesse Marsch, but I think I've got a decent grasp on what he can bring to this Leeds United side. And from the years and years of Marcelo Bielsa teachings, I feel like the transitions to Jesse Marsch might be a little bit more easy than a lot of people think. So what do we know about the new boss straight off the bat? Is high octane football, which is a massive beneficiary at the minute to this squad. Why? Because there's not a huge transition. You look at someone that we could have brought in, me and KG were discussing off air, Nuno at Wolves, who I know has been spoken about on the waves with Leeds United, someone who's got promoted with Wolverhampton Wanderers as champions, and someone who could come in and defensively show Leeds United up. But quite simply, Leeds are not ready-made for that sort of manager to come in. It's not plausible. It's impossible, really. The philosophy of what the players know and what they've learned over the past 4.5 years would just go out of the window. It wouldn't work, and I would categorically say it wouldn't work right off the bat. Jesse Marsch is a completely different proposition, really. Yes, it hasn't worked for him in spouts beforehand, but it didn't work for Marcelo Bielsa in spouts beforehand. You know, Lazio, Espanyol, there's an argument there that it didn't work out at Argentina as well, of course. So every manager, unless you're a top 2 manager, has spouts within his career where it's not worked. So I don't think he can be judged on that, but it was his last job, and we'll get into that in a little bit. Now, what will he bring to Leeds United that's a little bit different? Well, when he came in after Nagelsmann at Leipzig, which was his last job, the thing that he brought in was a different style. Now, Nagelsmann was more of a possession-based zonal manager, whereas we know with Jesse Marsch, or if you don't know already, he's, as I've said before, high-octane, high-pressing, ball-orientated manager who has a different style to Marcelo Bielsa, but has referenced Marcelo Bielsa several times in Coach's Voice video, which is a beneficiary in my opinion, because he's almost a disciple without being a disciple of Marcelo Bielsa. And the great one has laid the foundations, and we're hoping as Leeds United fans, or I'm hoping anyway, that Jesse Marsch can build the house on that foundation. So what do we know? He's completely ball orientated, which is very, very different to what Marcelo Bielsa is in terms of man marking. So you would expect that to go straight out of the window. What's really interesting from his comments previously is that he wants his team to work in a unit, which once again is quite different to Marcelo Bielsa, because all over the pitch it's individual battles. With Bielsa, Marsch, it's very, very different. The team has to trust one another, and that is a big staple of his managerial credentials. It's trusting one another. If I go and aggressively press this man, I'm expecting 2 or 3 men to be behind me and ready to press that man as well. You know, when there's 3 players in the corner, they will press that player into oblivion with 5 players. Of course, that still leaves you open to a counter-attack from an opposition team, which, you know, is always the risk with playing that sort of style of football, which we've learned under Marcelo Bielsa. There's a lot of people as well who are talking about his time at Leipzig. Now, I think there's a lot of caveats in this as well. At the time, I believe Jesse Marsch's partner was going through some really, really bad illness, which, as we know, I think it might have been cancer, which, as we know, is you know, obviously it's absolutely horrendous. But overall, that can distract you unbelievably from the job that you were doing, which is a huge, huge caveat in this conversation. But as well, when you're looking at on the pitch as well, players like Ibrahima Konate, players like Daye Upamecano, Sabitzer, you know, all were moved on before he came through the door, which is it's a huge staple of your team leaving, and in a quite a strange way, it's the same impactful players that Leeds are without right now. So that could be like quite a nice transition. It's quite a nice comparative right now to what Leeds United are going through. So obviously following on from Nagelsmann was completely difficult for someone like Jesse Marsch, because he had to completely take them back to the playing days that they were before Nagelsmann, which with the success that the team had under Nagelsmann, a lot of those players now were of a level like Calvin Phillips is at, like Rafinha is at, where they wouldn't want to go back to what they knew before and put all those hard yards in that they had to do before Nagelsmann, because they are at the level that they are at right now. The difference between Leeds United and Leipzig is, with this transition, that's the only football Leeds United players know how to play, which is a massive, massive advantage. Now, when you look at the results that he had at Leipzig, they weren't all pretty. Let's make no bones about it. And when you're playing this style of football, everybody, it's never going to be pretty. really, when you come up against the top teams, because they're able to move you around. They've got top coaches and tacticians within their plethora of coaching staff that are going to be able to work you out with better players. And that's essentially what happened at Manchester City. They got hit for 6 at Manchester City. They still managed to score 3 goals, of course. But, you know, they were able to still have victories in his sort of short campaign at Leipzig as head coach in those 20 games over teams like Hertha Berlin in a 6-0 victory. So it didn't go well for him, really, overall. In the 7th and the 10th game week, apparently Jesse Marsch was turning around and saying, is this really the job for me? Apparently there was sort of player revolt in there as well. As I've just mentioned beforehand, the player's not completely fallen in love with his style of football, which surely would be a lot easier at Leeds United, as I've said, because it's all they know. And listen, when your players are skeptical and they're big time players, you know player power is absolutely huge. So what is he going to do? That's the question. Well, from what I've seen, what I've read, there's information flying around that he can go into a 3-4-3. There's also information stating that he could stick to a 4-1-4-1 with Leeds United. I think that's very unlikely. I think you're going to see him stick to the staple formation he knows, which is, you know, he plays vertically. It's a vertical sort of unit that they play in, and it is the 4-2-2-2. So then you would expect to potentially see Joe Gelhardt within the side. You would hope, you know, Rodrigo could play beside Joe Gelhardt there. We've frequently not really seen Rodrigo play as that number 2 striker, partnered up with the striker in sort of a vertical system before. It's always been more of sort of a wide 4-4-2 if he is to play that. But this can be, you know, when you play in this sort of formation, you can always sort of modify it into a 4-4-2 diamond, which could potentially see Rafinha playing in the number 10, which you know, that could excite quite a lot of fans. I know a lot of fans have spoken about that before. But overall, he's very offensive. We know that, and that's the transitional movement that Leeds United are going to have to go in with this guy. As I've said before, they cannot go to a solely defensive manager, even if Leeds United know that would help them out right now, because I don't think that they will be able to indoctrinate these players into that system right off the bat. I think it would take a long, long time. Think of how long it's taken Bielsa to get them into these methods. Well, a little bit of a tweak in terms of what this guy does instead of Bielsa is surely better than throwing it all out of the window. So what is really interesting about it is it's all about speed. We know the man for man is going to change, but the team is all about moving in a unit, as I've illustrated before, so it's not going to be a man for man system. Trust, as I've said before as well, is absolutely key. If one man goes to this, Marsch has referenced this several times before, he needs to know that that man is going to be there behind him. And it's all about aggression and doing that. So the trust in the players is absolutely essential, and could be a massive, massive flaw in what happened at Leipzig, because the players simply didn't trust what was happening with Jesse Marsch at the club at that moment in time. Whereas if you compare that to Salzburg, in his previous job where he was head coach, they all believed in it, you know, including a certain Brendan Aronson. So it's all about the collectives, all about the unit, and overloading certain areas in the pitch. So it's going to be interesting to see what formation we play before he has actually deployed a 3-4-1-2 formation, which would sort of facilitate a counter-attacking style for Leeds United as well. You would get 7 players who would, you know, be defensively minded. And then obviously you would get the 1 and the 2 up top, which could see Leeds break on the counter-attack, which I know a lot of fans have been looking for. So as I say, there's a lot of caveats to this. He's an American coach coming into the Premier League. It's going to be a really difficult task for him. What I do not want to see, hopefully, is Leeds fans going after him because he's American. That is just, for me, completely brain dead and quite an archaic way of thinking. I think you've got to support the guy. He's done very, very well in what he's done. He's a respected coach across the world, as is Marcelo Bielsa. Of course, he's the godfather, but this guy's one of the proteges who works with Bielsa philosophies. But, you know, there's a lot of people who talk about Calvin Phillips, talk about Rafinha, talk about Bamford, rightly so, because Bielsa's done unbelievably. But this guy, Jesse Marsch, has improved players like Nkunku, I was about to say Alfie then, Erling Haaland, Szoboszlai. He's also improved Minamino as well, who Leeds were linked with. So there's top players there who Leeds United have actually looked at previously and have been sort of linked with the club that Jesse Marsch has improved, who've gone on to be top players at their level. So, he has got that same pedigree in a coaching stance. He's very, very well respected. So, I think what we can expect is an aggressive style of play. I think the players hopefully will buy in. It's a fresh coach, fresh ideas. They're going to have to play for the places, even if we have got a thin squad, because we've got youth development there who are going to be chomping at the bit in terms of Cresswell, Lewis Bate, and Joe Gelhardt. Maybe they'll get a new lease of life because they might be able to get into the starting 11. Who knows? Maybe the new 4-2-2-2 formation will spring a little bit of a surprise to opposition managers as well, who are sort of used to now playing up against the Marcelo Bielsa side, where they may think they can move parts around, i.e. Tottenham, i.e. Manchester United. Maybe we'll go into these next 12 games and the managers are not going to really fully understand what it's like to come up against a different manager who plays a modified system here. So that's where it's exciting for me. I'm completely gutted about Marcelo Bielsa. I keep seeing stuff about him online and it breaks my heart all the time. As I say, I hope he gets another coaching role and we can all go and follow that team as well, eh? But listen, I'm just making this video because, we've got a fixture at the weekend and we've got a new man through the door. We just have to support him. And hopefully you guys have got a little bit of vigor from this. And at least with a Bielsa disciple is taking over the reins. And hopefully he can get the best so Leeds United can stay in the division. Listen, it's the right style in terms of transition, as I've just mentioned, but it's absolutely key that the players buy into it. And if the players don't buy into it, Leeds could be in a whole lot of trouble. So hopefully they do. Hope you've enjoyed this, guys. Let me know in the comment section below what you think of the new appointment. Are you happy? Are you sad? If you can take the Bielsa if you're just looking at it from a football perspective going forward, are you sort of happy at what you're going to see with Jesse Marsch? Are you skeptical? Let me know in the comment section below. I hope you guys are happy and healthy, and we will see you in a bit.